She thought she was making the worst decision of her life. But before the night was over, Ava Brooks would discover that the stranger she married in anger was hiding a secret powerful enough to change her future forever. The rain tapped softly against the restaurant windows as Ava stared at the empty chair across from her table. The candle between the plates had nearly burned down to nothing, its small flame trembling just like the hope she had been carrying for the past 3 years. Around her, couples laughed over dessert, families celebrated birthdays, and waiters moved gracefully through the crowded dining room carrying trays of expensive food. But Ava sat alone. Again, 8 dates, 8 disappointments, 8 different men who had promised something they never intended to give. She glanced down at her phone one last time. No message, no apology, no explanation, just silence. The same silence she had learned to hate. 20 minutes earlier, her date had excused himself to take a phone call. Then he simply never came back. Ava let out a bitter laugh and pushed away the untouched slice of cheesecake sitting in front of her. She should have known. The signs had been there all evening. The distracted answers. The constant checking of his phone. The forced smile. She had ignored all of it because she wanted to believe this time would be different. It never was. Across the room, she caught her reflection in a large decorative mirror. A beautiful black woman with warm brown skin, intelligent eyes, and a dark green dress she had spent 2 weeks debating whether she could afford. She looked successful, confident, put together, but appearances were deceptive. Beneath that calm exterior was a woman exhausted from disappointment. A woman tired of being treated like an option, tired of hearing friends tell her that the right man would eventually come along, tired of attending weddings where everyone asked why she was still single. The waitress approached carefully. "Would you like me to box that up for you?" Ava forced a smile. "No thanks." The waitress nodded sympathetically. She had clearly seen enough failed dates to recognize another one. Ava stood and reached for her purse. The restaurant suddenly felt too warm, too crowded, too full of happy people. She needed air. 5 minutes later, she stepped outside into the cool Chicago evening. The rain had stopped, leaving the sidewalks shimmering beneath the city lights. Traffic rolled past in slow streams of red and white. Ava walked without direction, her heels clicking against the pavement. Anger simmered beneath every step. Not anger at the man who had disappeared. Not even anger at the 8 men before him. She was angry at herself for still believing. At the corner of a quiet city park, she stopped. A single bench sat beneath a glowing street lamp. A man occupied one side of it. He wore a dark coat and sat with the kind of stillness that made the busy city seem distant. His features were sharp, his posture relaxed, his expression unreadable as he looked out across the empty park. Ava barely noticed him at first. She was too busy arguing with the universe. Throwing her hands into the air, she laughed bitterly and shook her head. "You know what?" she said aloud. "Maybe I should just marry a random stranger." The words escaped before she could stop them. The man turned slowly toward her. His eyes met hers. Calm, steady, completely serious. Then he spoke. "Okay." Ava blinked. "What?" The stranger rose from the bench. "Marry me." And just like that, everything changed. Ava stared at him, certain she had misunderstood. The city lights reflected in the puddles around them, casting silver patterns across the sidewalk as passing cars hummed through the Chicago night. The stranger stood calmly beneath the street lamp, his hands resting inside the pockets of his dark coat, as if proposing marriage to a complete stranger was the most normal thing in the world. "You cannot be serious," Ava said. To her surprise, the corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "I am completely serious." Ava laughed. It was the kind of laugh that appeared when life became too ridiculous to process. "You do not even know my last name." "Brooks," he replied. Her smile vanished instantly. "How do you know that?" He glanced toward the reservation receipt she still held in her hand. Her full name was printed clearly. Across the top. "Lucky guess." Ava shook her head. "This is insane." "Probably." His answer came without hesitation. "Then why are you standing here talking to me?" For a moment she did not answer. Because that question was far more difficult than she wanted to admit. The truth was she should have walked away. Any sensible person would have. Yet something about him felt different. He was not trying to impress her. He was not bragging about his job. He was not checking his phone every 30 seconds. He was simply standing there, looking at her as if she was the only person in the city worth paying attention to. "What is your name?" she finally asked. "Vincent." Just Vincent. For now. Ava narrowed her eyes. That sounds suspicious. It usually does. Another laugh escaped before she could stop it. The strange thing was that she had not laughed this much during any of her previous dates. Not even the first few good ones. Especially not the 8th disaster she had just escaped. Vincent motioned toward the bench. Sit for a minute. Normally, she would have refused. Her mother had spent years teaching her not to trust strangers. But tonight normal felt very far away. Ava sat on one side of the bench while Vincent returned to the other. Several feet separated them. The city moved around them while silence settled comfortably between them. Bad date? Vincent asked. Ava rolled her eyes. Number 8. 8. 8. He nodded slowly. That is impressive. It is not impressive. No, I mean surviving 8 disappointments and still believing someone decent might exist. That takes commitment. Ava stared at him. Most people responded with sympathy or awkward encouragement. Nobody had ever framed it that way. She looked down at her hands. Maybe that is my problem. Believing in people? Believing too much. Vincent studied her quietly. You run a bookstore? Ava looked up sharply. How do you know that? There is a small ink stain on your thumb. The kind people get from handling inventory tags. And your tote bag has the logo. Ava glanced at the canvas bag hanging from her shoulder. He was right. You notice everything. Most people do. They just pretend. They do not. The wind stirred through the trees overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn echoed across the city. Ava realized nearly 20 minutes had passed. Yet she felt strangely calm. Then Vincent looked toward her and asked a question that made her heart pause. Tell me honestly, Ava, if life gave you the chance to start over tonight, would you take it? For several seconds, Ava did not answer. The question lingered between them like the last note of a song. She looked past Vincent toward the glowing skyline, toward the thousands of windows scattered across the city. Somewhere inside those buildings were people living lives they had planned carefully. People who knew where they were going next week, next month, next year. Ava had always believed she was one of those people. Yet here she was, sitting beside a stranger after the worst date of her life, unable to remember the last time she had felt certain about anything. I do not know, she admitted quietly. Vincent nodded as if that answer made perfect sense. Most people think they need certainty before making a change. Do they not? No. Usually they need courage. Ava laughed softly. You always talk like that. Like what? Like somebody who swallowed an entire shelf of motivational books. For the first time, she saw genuine amusement flash across his face. It transformed him completely. The serious man sitting beneath the street lamp suddenly looked younger, warmer, almost approachable. That is probably the nicest insult I have received this year, he said. Ava shook her head and smiled despite herself. The strange thing was that she felt comfortable. More comfortable than she should have felt sitting beside a man she had known for less than half an hour. Most conversations exhausted her. They felt like interviews disguised as romance. Questions about careers. Questions about income. Questions designed to measure whether someone was worth investing time in. Vincent had not asked any of those things. Instead, he listened. Really listened. So what would your fresh start look like, he asked. Ava leaned back against the bench. A small house, somewhere quiet. How quiet? No traffic. Outside my window. That is ambitious in Chicago. She laughed again. A bookstore that actually makes money. Now that is fantasy. A dog. Reasonable. And maybe. She hesitated. Maybe somebody who stays. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Vincent did not immediately respond. His gaze lowered briefly toward the sidewalk. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a softness she had not heard before. That sounds like a good dream. Ava suddenly felt exposed. She crossed her arms. Forget I said that. I do not think I can. Silence settled again. Comfortable. Unforced. Then Vincent checked his watch. Not a quick glance. Not the distracted habit of someone waiting for a better option. More like someone remembering an obligation. He stood. Come with me. Ava blinked. Where? For coffee. It is almost 10:30. Exactly. The best conversations happen after 10. She narrowed her eyes. That sounds suspicious too. Everything sounds suspicious when you are determined enough. Against all logic, Ava stood. They walked 3 blocks through the cool evening air before arriving at a small 24-hour cafe, tucked between 2 older brick buildings. Inside, warm light spilled across polished wood tables, and the smell of fresh coffee wrapped around them like a blanket. They ordered drinks and sat near the window. An hour passed, then another. They talked about books, childhood memories, favorite cities, embarrassing mistakes, and dreams neither of them had told anyone else. Not once did Vincent check his phone. Not once did he seem eager to leave. And somewhere around midnight, Ava realized something startling. She had spent more meaningful time with this stranger than with all 8 of her failed dates combined. Then Vincent reached into his coat pocket and placed something on the table. A business card, completely blank except for a phone number. Ava looked up. That is it. That is it. No job title. No. No last name. Not yet. Ava stared at the card, then back at him. Vincent smiled faintly. Call me tomorrow. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could speak, a black SUV rolled quietly to the curb outside the cafe, and 2 men in dark suits stepped out onto the sidewalk. The moment they saw Vincent through the window, both men straightened immediately, their expressions shifting with unmistakable respect. Ava followed Vincent's gaze toward the window. The 2 men outside looked professional, their dark suits perfectly tailored despite the late hour. One of them opened the rear door of the SUV and then stepped back, waiting. Not casually, not impatiently, waiting with the kind of discipline usually reserved for people who were accustomed to taking instructions. Ava glanced back at Vincent. Friends of yours? She asked. Vincent picked up his coffee cup and took a slow sip. Something like that. It was not really an answer. Ava noticed that immediately. Yet his expression remained calm, almost amused, as if he already knew what she was thinking. The taller of the 2 men briefly looked through the cafe window. The moment his eyes met Vincent's, he lowered his head respectfully. Ava had never seen anything quite like it. Nobody looked at ordinary people that way. Do they always wait outside for you? She asked. Vincent set down his cup. Most days. Most days. Some days are quieter than others. Ava folded her arms. You know, normal people usually say things like accountant, teacher, or software engineer when someone asks what they do. A faint smile appeared. I never claimed to be normal. Before she could respond, the waitress approached with the check. Vincent reached for it automatically. Ava immediately grabbed the other side. Absolutely not. Why not? Because I am capable of paying for my own coffee. I never doubted that. Then let me. For a second, neither of them moved. The waitress stood awkwardly between them. Finally, Vincent released the check. Fair enough. Ava paid and handed it back, feeling strangely victorious. When the waitress walked away, Vincent studied her with quiet curiosity. You do that often? Do what? Fight battles nobody asked you to fight. Ava laughed. Maybe. Interesting. She shook her head. You say that word a lot. Because you are. The answer came so naturally that it caught her off guard. Before she could think of a response, Vincent stood and slipped on his coat. Outside, the SUV remained parked by the curb. The city had grown quieter now. Fewer cars. Fewer pedestrians. Just the distant glow of Chicago stretching beneath the night sky. They stepped onto the sidewalk together. The cold air carried the scent of rain-soaked pavement. One of the suited men immediately approached. Sir. The single word was respectful and direct. Ava noticed something else. The man never looked Vincent directly in the eye for more than a second. Vincent nodded once. Give us a minute. Of course, sir. The man stepped back immediately. Ava stared after him. Sir. Vincent glanced toward her. Is that a problem? No. It is just unusual. You seem disappointed. I am curious. Curiosity can be dangerous. Now you definitely sound suspicious. The smile returned. Then his expression softened slightly. Call me tomorrow, Ava. She looked down at the blank business card still resting in her hand. The phone number stared back at her. No company name. No address. Nothing. Just a number and a mystery. What happens if I do not? She asked. Vincent opened the SUV door. For the first time that night, something unreadable flashed behind his eyes. Not confidence. Not arrogance. Something quieter. Then I will spend a very long time wondering what could have happened if you did. The door closed. Seconds later, the SUV pulled away from the curb and disappeared into the sleeping city. Ava remained standing beneath the street lamp, the business card clutched between her fingers. She had met hundreds of people in her life. Yet somehow the man with no last name, no explanation, and no clear place in her world was suddenly the one she could not stop thinking about. The next morning, Ava woke up convinced the entire night had been some kind of emotional hallucination. Sunlight spilled across her apartment floor while the sounds of Chicago drifted through the partially open window. For several minutes, she stared at the blank business card resting on her nightstand. Just a phone number. Nothing more. No website. No company logo. No social media account. No clue. It should have been easy to forget him. Instead, Vincent occupied her thoughts from the moment she opened her eyes. By noon, she found herself checking the card again. By 2 o'clock, she had stopped pretending she was not curious. At exactly 3:17 in the afternoon, she picked up her phone and called the number. The line rang once. "I was beginning to think you would never call." Ava froze. "How did you know it was me?" "Because nobody else has that number." She rolled her eyes despite smiling. "That sounds incredibly inconvenient." "It keeps life simple." 2 hours later, they met for lunch at a quiet restaurant overlooking the Chicago River. Once again, Vincent arrived precisely on time. Once again, he seemed completely focused on her and nothing else. Days turned into a pattern. Coffee, walks, long conversations, dinners that lasted far longer than planned. Yet the mystery only deepened. Vincent never discussed work in detail. He always answered questions honestly, but never completely. If she asked where he had been, he would tell her the city, never the reason. If she asked what he did, he would smile and change the subject. What surprised her most was how patient he was. He never pressured her, never rushed anything, never tried to impress her with money or status. And yet strange things kept happening. Restaurant managers greeted him nervously. Valets hurried toward his car before he even reached the entrance. Hotel staff somehow knew his preferences before he spoke. One evening, nearly 3 weeks after they first met, Vincent invited her to dinner at one of the most exclusive restaurants in downtown Chicago. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Live piano music drifted through the dining room. The kind of place Ava usually only saw in magazines. She looked around as they were escorted to their table. "Please tell me you are not secretly a billionaire." Vincent smiled. "Would that be a problem?" "That depends." "On what?" "Whether you are secretly terrible." For the first time all evening, he laughed. A genuine laugh that caused several nearby diners to glance in their direction. Then something unexpected happened. An older man, standing near the center of the dining room, suddenly noticed Vincent. The color drained from his face. Conversations continued around them, but the man stood completely still. He immediately handed his wine glass to someone beside him and hurried across the room. Ava assumed he must be an old friend. Instead, when he reached their table, the man straightened his suit jacket and lowered his voice. "Mr. Moretti." The respect in those 2 words felt almost ceremonial. Vincent nodded politely. "Good evening, Harold." The man's eyes briefly shifted toward Ava before returning to Vincent. "It is an honor to see you again, sir." "Sir." The same word. The same careful tone. The same unmistakable deference. Ava felt her stomach tighten. Harold was not treating Vincent like a successful businessman. He was treating him like someone whose reputation carried enormous weight. Someone powerful. Someone important. Someone people did not casually question. And for the first time since meeting him, Ava realized she might know far less about Vincent Moretti than she had ever imagined. The rest of dinner passed in a haze. Ava smiled when she was supposed to smile and nodded when conversations required a response, but her mind remained fixed on one question. Who exactly was Vincent Moretti? When they finally stepped outside, the cool evening air felt like a relief. The city lights reflected across the river while traffic moved steadily through downtown Chicago. Vincent noticed her silence immediately. "You have been quiet for the last 20 minutes. Ava stopped walking. "Who was that man?" Vincent looked at her calmly. "An acquaintance." "That was not an acquaintance." "No. No." He looked terrified of disappointing you. For a moment, Vincent said nothing. The faint smile he often wore disappeared completely. "You want the truth?" "Yes." He glanced toward the river before returning his attention to her. "The truth is complicated. Try me." The silence stretched between them. Then Vincent surprised her. "Come with me tomorrow." Ava frowned. "Where?" "Somewhere important." "And then you will answer my questions?" "I will answer all of them." The following afternoon, a black SUV arrived outside Ava's apartment building precisely at 1 o'clock. She recognized the vehicle immediately. The same type that seemed to appear whenever Vincent was involved. The driver greeted her politely and opened the door. 40 minutes later, they left downtown Chicago behind. The skyline gradually disappeared in the distance as they traveled north through quieter neighborhoods lined with mature trees and historic homes. Eventually, the SUV turned through large iron gates and followed a winding private road. Ava expected a mansion. Instead, she found something entirely different. A community center stood near the center of the property. Children played basketball on an outdoor court, while volunteers organized supplies near a food pantry. Elderly residents sat together on shaded benches talking and laughing. The scene felt warm and alive. Nothing about it matched the mysterious image she had built in her head. Vincent was already waiting outside when she arrived. The moment several children spotted him, they ran toward him excitedly. "Mr. Vincent," one little boy shouted. Vincent knelt down and greeted each child by name. Not one or two names. Every single one. Ava watched in disbelief as he listened to their stories, asked about school projects, and congratulated a young girl for improving her grades. Later, he introduced her to the center director, an elderly woman named Margaret. The woman smiled warmly. This place would not exist without him. Ava looked around. "He owns it." Margaret laughed softly. "Owns it? Dear, he built it." Throughout the afternoon, Ava learned more. Vincent funded scholarship programs. He paid medical bills for struggling seniors. He sponsored job training classes and literacy programs. Yet none of it appeared online. There were no plaques displaying his name. No press conferences. No publicity. As the sun began to set, Ava found herself standing beside him near the basketball court. The children continued playing while golden lights stretched across the property. "Why did you never tell me about this?" she asked quietly. Vincent watched the game in progress. "Because it is not something I do for attention." Ava studied him carefully. Every answer she found seemed to create 3 new questions. Finally, she took a deep breath. "Vincent, what exactly do you do?" For the first time all day, his expression grew serious. He turned toward her slowly. "I think it is time you learned who I really am." The evening air felt heavier after those words. The laughter of children echoed from the basketball court behind them, but Ava barely heard it anymore. Vincent stood quietly, his hands resting in the pockets of his coat as the last rays of sunlight painted the sky gold and amber. For weeks, she had searched for answers. Now she was not entirely sure she wanted them. "I am listening," she said softly. Vincent nodded once. "My family owns several businesses throughout the city. Real estate, logistics, investments, community programs like this one." Ava frowned. "That does not explain why people look at you the way they do." "No," he admitted. "It does not." He looked toward the horizon before continuing. "My grandfather built an organization many decades ago. Over time, it became powerful. Very powerful. Some people call it a business empire. Others use different words." Ava felt her pulse quicken. She already knew what he was trying to say. She simply needed to hear it. Vincent met her eyes directly. "Many people refer to me as a mafia boss." The world seemed to pause. Somewhere nearby, a basketball bounced against concrete. A child laughed. A breeze moved through the trees. Yet for Ava, everything became strangely still. She stared at him, waiting for a smile, a joke, some indication that he was exaggerating. None came. "You are serious?" "Yes." Her mind raced through every strange moment since they had met. The SUV, the bodyguards, the nervous restaurant managers, the respectful greetings, the mysterious phone calls. Suddenly, every missing puzzle piece snapped into place. "Why did you not tell me?" she asked. Vincent's expression remained calm. "Because most people stop seeing me the moment they hear that title." Ava folded her arms tightly. "And you thought hiding it was better?" "I wanted you to know me before you knew my reputation." The honesty in his voice made it difficult to stay angry. That only frustrated her more. She turned away and looked. Across the property, children continued playing without a care in the world. Elderly residents sat on nearby benches sharing stories. Volunteers organized food deliveries inside the center. None of it matched the image she had carried in her head. "This does not make sense," she whispered. Vincent stepped beside her. Life rarely does. They stood in silence until a luxury sedan entered the property through the main gates. A woman stepped out. Tall, elegant, confident. She moved with the certainty of someone who belonged there. The moment she saw Vincent, her face brightened. Ava immediately noticed the familiarity between them. The woman approached quickly. "There you are." Her voice carried effortless confidence. Then she noticed Ava. Her smile faltered slightly. "Oh." Vincent's expression became unreadable. Sophia. The woman looked directly at Ava before returning her attention to him. I have been trying to reach you all day. Ava sensed tension immediately. Not hostility. Something more complicated. Something unfinished. Sophia glanced between them, and then spoke words that caused Ava's stomach to drop. Are you finally going to tell her about our engagement? The smile disappeared from Ava's face. The children continued laughing in the distance. The sun continued sinking below the horizon. But inside Ava's chest, everything suddenly felt cold. For several seconds nobody moved. Ava stared at Sophia, certain she had misunderstood. The word engagement echoed inside her mind with painful clarity. She slowly turned toward Vincent, waiting for him to deny it. Waiting for him to laugh and explain that this was some bizarre misunderstanding. But he did neither. His jaw tightened slightly. Sophia crossed her arms and looked between them. You did not tell her. It was not a question. Ava felt her chest grow heavy. Every conversation, every dinner, every moment she had spent convincing herself that Vincent was different suddenly felt fragile. Is it true? She asked quietly. Vincent looked directly at her. It is complicated. Ava laughed once. The sound carried no humor at all. That is not an answer. The children nearby continued their basketball game, completely unaware that Ava's world had just shifted beneath her feet. Sophia sighed. Of course it is true. Our families announced it months ago. Ava took a step back. She could not look at either of them. Months ago. Vincent immediately spoke. Nothing about it was personal. Ava looked at him sharply. Nothing about it was personal. The hurt in her voice surprised even her. You spent weeks getting to know me. Because I wanted to know you. While hiding this. Silence. The answer was enough. Ava felt foolish. Not because Vincent was powerful. Not because he was wealthy. But because she had started trusting him. She had started believing that the connection between them was real. Sophia studied her carefully. To her credit, there was no cruelty in her expression. Only discomfort. I did not know about you, she admitted. Otherwise I would have spoken to Vincent sooner. Ava nodded slowly. That is very considerate. Vincent stepped forward. Ava. She raised a hand. Do not. The single word stopped him immediately. For the first time since they had met, she saw uncertainty in his eyes. Not confidence. Not control. Uncertainty. Yet she could not stay. Not while questions crashed through her mind. Not while she felt like the last person to learn the truth. I need to go home. Vincent glanced toward the waiting SUV. I will take you. No. Ava. No. Her voice softened slightly. I just need some time. The drive back to Chicago felt endless. She had accepted a ride from one of the community center volunteers instead. The entire trip, she stared out the window while the city slowly reappeared on the horizon. That night, she barely slept. Every memory replayed itself. The bench, the coffee shop, the river, the conversations that lasted for hours. Had any of it been real? The next morning her phone buzzed repeatedly. Messages from Vincent. Missed calls. Voicemails. She listened to none of them. By afternoon she escaped into work, hoping the bookstore would distract her. It almost worked. Until her co-worker Emily rushed toward her holding a tablet. Ava, have you seen this? Ava looked up. Seen what? Emily placed the screen in front of her. A photograph filled the display. Vincent stood beside Sophia at a charity gala. The headline beneath the image was impossible to ignore. Chicago heir Vincent Moretti and longtime fiancée Sophia Bennett expected to announce wedding plans soon. Ava stopped breathing. The article had been published less than an hour earlier. And for the first time since meeting Vincent Moretti, she wondered whether she had ever truly known him at all. 3 days passed without a single conversation between them. Ava ignored every call, every message, every attempt Vincent made to explain. She buried herself in work, stacking books, helping customers, and pretending her heart was not involved. Yet every evening, she found herself staring at her phone, wondering why none of it made sense. If Vincent truly planned to marry Sophia, why had he spent weeks pursuing her? Why had he introduced her to the community center? Why had he looked at her the way he did whenever she spoke about her dreams? On the 4th day, as the bookstore prepared to close, the front door opened. Ava looked up and froze. Vincent stood quietly near the entrance. No SUV, no security detail, no expensive suit, just a dark sweater and tired eyes. The entire store seemed to grow silent. We are closing, Ava said softly. I know. He did not move closer. I only need 5 minutes. Ava hesitated before nodding toward a reading area near the back. They sat across from each other, surrounded by shelves and warm light. For several seconds, neither spoke. Finally, Vincent broke the silence. There was never an engagement. Ava frowned. Sophia said there was. Our families discussed the idea years ago. Business alliances. Expectations. Traditions. He shook his head. Neither of us wanted it. We both refused. Ava stared at him. Then why did that article exist? Because some people benefit from the story continuing. His voice remained calm. Sophia came to the center that day because she was trying to warn me. Ava blinked. Warn you? Someone leaked old information to the press hoping to create exactly what happened. Confusion. Distance. Doubt. The bookstore felt impossibly quiet. Vincent leaned forward slightly. Ava, I should have told you everything sooner. You deserve the truth. She searched his face carefully. For the first time since meeting him, there were no walls left. No mystery. No careful answers. Just honesty. Why me? She asked. Out of all the people in Chicago, why me? A faint smile appeared. Do you remember what I told you the night we met? Ava nodded slowly. You said most people need courage before they can change their lives. Vincent's eyes softened. No. Before that. Then she remembered. The park bench. The street lamp. The impossible conversation. You said I was interesting. Vincent smiled. Because you are. He glanced around the bookstore. You work hard. You care about people. You fight for things even when nobody asks you to. You still believe in kindness after being disappointed again and again. His voice lowered. I met you months before that night. Ava's breath caught. What? I saw you here several times. Once helping an elderly customer carry books to her car during a snowstorm. Once staying late to organize a literacy fundraiser. Once giving your lunch to someone who needed it more. He laughed softly. You never noticed me. Ava felt tears gathering in her eyes. All this time she thought their meeting had been random. It had never been random at all. Vincent reached into his jacket and pulled out the same blank business card she had kept since the night they met. I was going to throw this away after you never called. Ava smiled through her tears. Good thing I did. The following spring, family, friends, children from the community center, and bookstore customers filled a garden overlooking Lake Michigan. There were no business deals. No expectations. No arrangements. Just two people choosing each other freely. As Ava walked toward Vincent beneath the afternoon sun, she remembered the woman who had sat alone in a restaurant months earlier, believing she would never find someone who stayed. She had been wrong. Some stories begin with certainty. The best ones begin with a stranger, a difficult choice, and the courage to trust again. And if you enjoyed this story, do not forget to subscribe, like, and share so more people can discover stories about dignity, hope, and unexpected love.